Okay guys, the thing I'm going to do here is show you the simplest way that I know of how to square up a building. We got a piece of styrofoam here just to give you an example. It's a lot faster to do it like this, to show you on a small scale, than to walk across the project a whole bunch of times. So what I'm going to do is show you, we're going to use the edge of this foam as the property corner. So this is one property corner here, then we got another property corner right there, and so we'll measure off of the property corners to establish where the house is going to be. And in this situation, we're just going to go square off of the edge of the property line to the front of the building, so that it's as simple as we can get it. So we got some our steel pegs, which is nails. We got our little blocks for our batter boards. So we'll set these batter boards up and explain the simplest way we can do it. Okay, so this is the front of our property line here. Our house is going to be facing this way. So we got this is the edge of our property line here and here. So we're going to measure 10 feet out, which is, in this case, we're just going to go 10 inches. So we make a mark on the ground 10 feet back from the property line. So we go another 10 feet back here. And then off the front of the property, we want to go back about 30 feet or so your vehicle can pull up and park. So approximately 30 feet, which is, we're just going to say it's about right here somewhere. So we're going to put 30 feet there. We'll do 30 feet over here. And these are just scratches in the dirt. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, the house is going to be about that big, which is 30 inches. So we'll say it's 30 feet. So we make another mark in the sand, and then you make another mark in the sand at 30 feet again. Right here. These are just rough marks. They're not anything. This is just to get it so that your batter boards are close. So we're going to do this one basically square. So you get your measurements from the edge of your... Okay, so what we've done here is we measured 10 feet off the property line over to here, made a mark in the dirt. And then right over here on the other side of the house, we measured from the property line over to the edge of here, made a mark in the dirt. But on the front of it, you're for sure going to know what you wanted on the front. So go back 30, 50 feet, whatever you're going to do. Make a mark in the sand there. Same thing here. Measure off of the front of the property to there, so that you're getting yourself a square box here for your house. That's pretty close. This is just rough here. And then you measure your width of your house. Say your house is 30 feet wide. So you have your mark in your sand, you measure, mark it in the sand here. Same thing over there. Make another mark right there, measuring off of that. So now you can just stab your batter boards in the ground based off those marks, and they'll be pretty close. Okay, so I've built a couple of batter boards. We're going to put a batter board in right here. So this is our 10-foot mark, so we center our batter board over that mark. But we keep it back far enough that it doesn't cross our line there. So we're going to keep it back and try to center it the best we can. Put our batter board in right there. Then we come down here and do the same thing. This is center, so we keep it kind of centered over the 10-foot mark. Put your batter board in. I personally like to level my batter boards. If the ground is flat, then I usually laser these in and set them to all level, so that when your lines intersect, they don't have gaps between them, so you don't have to plumb bob down. as much. I mean, most of the time you do have to, but this is just it's a faster way to do it on like a flat house pad where everything's ideal, I guess you could say. But so you put your first, I usually use screws in here so that you're not pounding on the top of your batter board. After you level it up, you don't want to be pounding. So I put a screw in right here, exactly 10 feet from the property line, and then the same thing down there. So I put another screw in right here, and then I pull a string across here. I'll usually go around and put all the batter boards in before I pull the string, so we'll just go ahead and do that. So we'll put this batter board in, and it's center of this line, or close to. Then I'll center this batter board over that line as well, and I keep it back so that when I'm digging my footings, these batter boards ain't in the way. So this is the lines. The lines will intersect about right here. So these two lines are perfectly 10 feet from the property line, so they're right on where we want them. Okay, so we got our first string up. These are 10 feet from the property line. I got that string up. It's exactly parallel with the edge of the property. So I'm never going to move that string again. That's set in stone. I'm not going to move it. So you don't ever have to fuss with that one. So we'll set our other batter boards up on our marks in the dirt. Right there and right there. So we'll put those in, and then we can pull some more strings across there. I'm lining this up. Here's my other line, so I'm staying back far enough that I can dig footings. So I put my other batter board in right here, centering it on our line here. Same thing going this way. Here's my line. Put my batter board in back a little bit. My line's coming this way right here. I put my batter board in. I try to line these batter boards up so these things are kind of facing, lining up with each other, because if they get like this too much, then when you're moving it, you could actually have to shift down this way on your board. So try to kind of parallel those up best you can. Keep them back from so there's room to dig your footings. Same with this way. We got our line coming across here. So this line's right here, it's coming across. So I try to center my batter board there as well. Just pound your pegs into it. Again, trying to line these up somewhat. Scoot them over a little bit so it's lining up with this one. Okay, now I'm ready to pull strings. So to eliminate moving strings a whole bunch, then I measure off of here, because this is perfectly parallel with the property. So I pull off here the width of my house. So if my house is, we'll mark it at 30 feet right here. So I measure off my other wall, and I mark it at 30 feet here. And I put a screw in these right here to hold it in place. Put my screws in right there to hold my string. Okay, so what I've got here, 10 feet off the property line. So I measure exactly my width of my house, which is 30 feet. Same thing down here. 30 feet off of here over to here. Now these two lines are perfectly parallel, so those two are not going to move. Those are set. I don't have to move them ever again. So now what we'll do is establish from here, right here off front of property, to the front of house. So we'll put front of house right there. We'll do the same thing down here. Measure off property to the front of house. We'll put those in. Okay, we've measured from front of property to front of house, and from front of property to front of house. We got our string set up there, so this string never moves. So this last string will measure from corner of house over to there to corner of house, and then we'll do the same on this side, and then we'll check our diagonals. We should be really close based on that figure, so you won't have to be doing a lot of moving. So these two strings, this one and this one, never need to move. Okay, so now I'm going to measure my diagonal, because I went through the steps to measure off the property lines, get everything as square as I can with property lines. Property lines aren't always square, so you kind of have to keep double checking everything. But so I'm gonna burn a foot right there, and I've got 54 5/16 on my diagonal. So I'm gonna burn a foot here, and I've got 54 5/16 on my diagonal. So that thing's perfectly square. But I had the perfect scenario. This was perfectly square piece of material to work with, or the property was perfectly square, which is never, hardly ever the case. You're always in a curved cul-de-sac or something. So what you do is you establish these two lines, or first you measure off, you stick with one edge of the property. If they want their house on a skew, just build yourself a straight line and don't move that line. And then measure off of it to the edge of your house. Make this line permanent based off the line that you have decided, whether it's twisted like this, whether it's on a diagonal. Don't move these two after you get them set. And then you decide where you want this line, you put it in, and if you're not square, you leave this point and you leave this point just as long as here and here is the right measurement, so that you only ever move these 2 points. So you could slide this, say it's out of square, you'd slide this an inch to get it square. You'd move this exactly the same, 1 inch. And then you'd check your diagonal. These two you'd only ever move this one and this one. All the rest is already square. So you shift those. Once you get parallel here, and you measure here and here and establish these 2 points where you want them, only move these and shift them to square. Well, that's all just good and dandy, but what about like a jog in the house? Let's say the house comes along and it has a jog in it like this. Okay, so what I usually do is I take another batter board, and let's say it's 6 feet. Measure over 6 feet, put your batter board there and center it in the batter board. Center your 6 feet. So you measure 6 feet off here, put your nail in, do another batter board right here, 6 feet over, and then pull another string all the way through there. So I'd measure 6 feet off of there, put my string line in, put my screw in the top of my batter board, come over here, measure 6 feet over, put another screw in the top of your batter board, pull another string. A lot of times you can get away without a batter board on, like, say this is a 6-foot jog. Usually you can get away with it by going, like, let's just say it's a 20-foot jog over this way. So you just pound a peg in right at 20 feet. Just pound a peg in the ground, and then you do the same thing right here. Measure 20 feet off your string, pound a peg in the ground, pull a string from here to here, and it's perfectly square because this one's perfectly square. So then you'll have a perfectly square jog. You can paint your lines on the ground or whatever. Okay, so we've got our lines established here. We developed perfectly square, and it looked pretty simple because I was using a perfectly square piece of foam, which is basically mean a perfectly square piece of property. which isn't always the case. But whatever you decide with this string line here, if it turns this way or twists, that's always going to stay the same. So you just measure off of it. So you measure off it wherever it ends up being. You measure off, and that's the width of your house, even if it's skewed from your property line. You have to establish at least 2 straight lines. You got one here, and then whatever distance they want it back from the front of their property, if it's curved or anything. So you establish 2 lines for their house, and then there won't be any errors in it. So that line, this line stay parallel. Decide where from the front of property to the first line, and then measure the width of your house over to there, right there, and then only move those 2 points right here and right there. Those are the only 2 points you'll ever move when you're squaring it up. The rest of them are stay solid, and it'll be simple and fast. Once you get it all squared up, if you have a jog in your house, you always square it up off of the furthest distance so that you can use it for a measuring point for the rest of your house. Like say you have 5 jogs in your house, go out to the very biggest, the furthest out jog when you're squaring it up, and then you can always measure in off of that square line, and that hopefully that helps clear it up and makes it simple to square up a house.